this computer. Yay! Welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining us in the SCULPT Fitness Academy as we present Dr. Carme Jones. She talks about how to reduce stress and naturally lower your body's cortisol levels, as we're always on the go, whether it's bad stress or good stress, where we have our schedule so packed, all of that stress compounds, and eventually our bodies need a break and they need a rest. And Dr. Carmen is going to be sharing all the best ways to help our bodies rest, relax, and reset. And at the end, as I share this recording, and you can share with your friends and your family who you think can benefit, I will tag along a bonus guide for how to shred body fat in a simple way and in a way that will help to support your efforts of lowering your body's stress load. So without further ado, here's Dr. Carmen with tonight's class. Woo! Dr. Carmen, welcome on.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Bree. Understanding our stress and our relationship with our stress hormone cortisol, I think is so important because it bleeds over into all areas of our physical and mental body. And so we're familiar with cortisol, right? Yeah. A lot of people refer to cortisol as that stress hormone. And when we talk about balancing our hormones, it's not just our cortisol, but also like our progesterone, our estrogen, our thyroid hormone, even insulin is a hormone. So they were all related in that umbrella of hormones. And when we experience stress or when we perceive stress, whether it's emotional stress, whether it's physical stress, like an illness, right, an injury, a surgery or accident, or even if it's something exciting, right, like planning a party or, like going for a job interview or planning a wedding, right? Like those are exciting things, but they're still a little bit stressful. Our body translates it the same across the board. Our body says, hey, this is stress. This is a stressful event. And then it kicks off this cascade of events that happens within our physiology. And so the way that that translates is when we experience or perceive stress, it kicks into this, like we call that fight or flight, right? That's survival mode. So we also call it the sympathetic mode. And so when we are in high sympathetics in this like survival state, our body's like, okay, we're in survival. We're trying to keep her alive. So we're going to down regulate some things that are just not quite as important, right? If our goal is stay alive, right? We're going to down regulate things like, may seem silly, but things like digestion, right? We don't have as much resources available for digestion when we are in this sympathetic, in this like go, go, go stressed state. What happens is our brain translates that as our heart and our lungs need more blood flow, right? They need more blood flow. They need more focus and energy to be able to run away or put up a fight. Right. So that means our other organ systems, like our digestion, just doesn't get as much support. So it actually decreases the blood flow to our digestion. It decreases the blood flow to our sex organs. So oftentimes we can see changes in like libido or our sex drive when we're under a lot of stress because, those are not, it's not, as necessary as survival. We can see changes to our skin, right? We can see changes to our skin, things like acne, psoriasis, eczema, when we're under a lot of stress. When we are shifting that focus out of this like hormone balance into a more a cortisol dominant stage. That's when we start to see things like hair loss. We start to see things like, even like skin changes, like less elasticity or more wrinkles in our skin. Sometimes we start to see hair change, like more graying, right? As a response. Sometimes, right, for skin, we might, yeah, see acne as well. Um, when we see that shift, where we're focusing more, our body's focusing more on survival, we can see more like high blood pressure issues, right? Or heart rate issues. If people have asthma, they could be more prone to asthma attacks because you've just got more blood flow to your heart and lungs because your body's on high alert, right? It's ready for like any minute you say go, your body's ready, right? Because we're in the survival mode. Um, when we see that shift away from like digestion, we can see, like IBS type symptoms. We could see constipation. We could see loose stools and diarrhea. Bloating, right, is a significant one. Changes in our gut microbiome, as well, because there's less blood flow to that area, so it's less nutrients to support our probiotics and our microbiome. Um, we can also see a shift in our immune system because if we're in survival mode, your body says, "Hey, we don't need to focus on our immune system as much." So we can see things like overreactive immune responses, like allergies or autoimmune conditions, right? With that, we can also see changes where, like, we may feel like we're aging a little bit quicker, right? Like if you've ever had that feeling of like, oh man, I'm too young to feel this old. That's often a cortisol response. That points we've been a little bit high stress for too long. Yeah. Do any of these symptoms sound familiar, ladies?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. They're very common and sometimes they sneak up on us, right? Sometimes we don't recognize when it starts happening, until we're kind of in the thick of it. And then it's usually not just one symptom, it's usually a whole slew of symptoms, right? Like the fatigue, sleep changes, headaches, memory changes, right? Maybe the gut changes, that lower or that uh, irregular immune response, right? Sometimes when we start like putting all those symptoms out and we start recognizing them and getting an understanding of like what could be the root cause, oftentimes, yeah, stress can be an underlier. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Carmen, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just going to say, this is my first time ever talking on Zoom. Sorry. I don't know what I'm doing. I was going to say, I thought I was having perimenopause like issues but what it was, I'm thinking now it was because I just came out of an extremely stressful season with work, because all those symptoms you just described is what I've had for the last couple of months, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
I'm coming out of it because I'm out of my stress, busy, crazy season with work, and I'm starting to feel better. And anyway, could it be related to perimenopause at all? Some of those symptoms too, though?
Yes. So when we talk about, yes, thank you for your comment, Courtney. When we talk about that relationship between our hormones, um, our sex hormones, our estrogen, our progesterone, our testosterone are in the same pathway as our cortisol, right? So when our cortisol is dominant in that we're more stressed in your body's, right, prioritizing cortisol to keep you alive, it down regulates our estrogen and our progesterone. So yes, it looks like perimenopause symptoms. It looks like, yeah, all of those symptoms plus like night sweats or hot flashes, right? Memory changes, weight changes, or sometimes I have some folks that maybe their weight's not changing, but it's like their the distribution of fat is changing, right? Especially around the middle and around our hips, that you can see in menopause. And so I think this is part of the reason why perimenopause is getting more like awareness and attraction around it, because we're seeing this happen in younger and younger women, right? When I've got women who come into my office in their 20s and their 30s and they're having hot flashes, they're like,
Oh, wow.
yeah, they're like, is this perimenopause? I was like, well, technically it is, but we got to get to the root cause, right? It's because there's an imbalance in that cortisol versus our sex hormones. And so we have to address the stress in order to balance that out.
I guess I've just never experienced all those symptoms in the past from a stressful season at work, because I have these stressful seasons are always in the spring and the fall, and I mean, I'm literally like almost getting physically sick from the stress. So I'm realizing like I need to like start regulating my stress a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I literally went to DK's to talk to Debbie, and she recommended some things that you had recommended to her. And that helped tremendously just to get my gut back on track. And now I feel so much better just from getting the gut issues. They're still being worked out, but that has helped tremendously with my overall feeling better. Just getting more on a regular,
Yes.
bathroom visits and stuff.
Perfect. So, a great example and comment is that it becomes a little bit of an additive effect, right? So it's not just the hormone shift and balances and like the increased stress. It's how well we handle that, but also are there other things going on, right?
Well, that's what I was saying. Like I've been this stressed before, but it never affected me this way. So I bet it does have something to do with lowering of estrogen, the perimenopause. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So as we age, right, as women age, we naturally have a shift where our body needs less estrogen hormone, right? And that's a
I didn't
natural
know that.
that we all experience.
Uh-huh.
But when we shift out of that, no, when we moved that paradigm towards menopause, where our body needs less estrogens, if we are filling that space with a higher demand in cortisol, then we see those symptoms much more significantly. Because what it's doing is actually lowering that threshold when we have high cortisol, as well as lowering our estrogens. Yeah. So I think that's why we're seeing it more and more. And yeah, I think there's a little bit of a shift where people are talking more and more about it.
So you're saying that we need less estrogen the older we get?
Yes.
Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So we still make estrogen, right? So even when we're in menopause and we're not having periods, and our body still makes estrogen, right? Even for women who don't like have had a hysterectomy, and they've had their uterus, they've had ovaries removed, and sometimes doctors will tell you, oh, you don't make any hormones. Well, that's not true. Our body still makes hormones. We're just making it from different areas, right? We still make our estrogens from our fat cells. We make it from our breast cells, right? Even if we don't have ovaries. This is part of the reason why sometimes you can see the body will like redistribute fat into different areas when we get into menopause, because our body's finding ways, okay, we're going to rely on our adipose tissue to make those hormones. Yeah.
And I may have come in, I don't want to keep talking too much, but I may have come in a little bit late on the cortisone thing. Were you saying that high cortisone is not good, right? And high stress can cause high cortisone?
Yeah, it's cortisol, which
Cortisol.
yeah, is what our body makes. So the adaptation to have high cortisol is natural, right? Like if there's a bear chasing me, I want to be able to run away.
Oh, okay.
Cortisol
Yeah.
reaction, right?
Okay.
So high cortisol isn't like a negative thing. It's chronic high cortisol.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what gets us in trouble.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
So that's why we want to visit, right, ways that we can help to close that loop on a daily basis. Yeah. Does that make sense?
I think so. I'm just seeing the importance more now than ever of just keeping not a constant stressful living.
Yeah.
So I took this last week off to of work just to work in my yard, and it has helped tremendously just to enjoy life again. I'm sure that's helped my cortisol levels. I didn't even think about it that way.
Good, good for you. I'm glad that you prioritize that.
Yeah.
Question, Dr. Carmen. So when women are going into perimenopause or any other sort of traumatic, not traumatic, I mean, well, okay, so childbirth. So after giving childbirth and your hormones are highly fluctuating, moving towards menopause, anytime your hormones are fluctuating greatly, is that a good time to embrace seed cycling?
Yes. So a little bit different, but what you I'm going to kind of pull apart a little bit about what you just asked. Okay. So when we are in postpartum, right? Like, so when we're pregnant, our body produces what we call super physiologic amounts of hormones, right? So we make twice as much estrogen, 2 to 3 times as much progesterone as we normally would, right? When we are growing a baby. And then after we deliver that baby, and after technically when we deliver the placenta, what was feeding that baby, our hormones just kind of fall off a cliff. So in that sense, it feels a little bit dramatic, because usually people are feeling really good, right? When they're pregnant because they have all these extra hormones. And then once we deliver that placenta, it literally just stops. And so it takes a little while to kind of kickstart our body for our ovaries to start producing the progesterone that it was supposed to, or that it needs to, because all of our hormones are on this, like what they call a feedback loop. So there's little receptors all throughout our body and our bloodstream and on our organs that are constantly surveying to see how much hormone we have circulating our body. And it says, hey, you've got plenty of hormones. We don't need to make any more. Or it says, hey, we don't have enough hormones. We need to make some more. So this is also why we can see, like, if people try hormone therapies, right? Like bioidentical hormones or something like that. That's an exogenous or an external use of hormones. So then your body says, oh, well, we don't need to make any more hormones because we've got enough circulating, right? So it's kind of the similar regard. But after in postpartum or after pregnancy, when you have this significant drop, we need to be doing things to support that production of appropriate hormones. So seed cycling is fantastic. Seed cycling can also be helpful in perimenopause, or as we're like transitioning to menopause, because again, even though our body's making less amounts of estrogens and progesterone, we still need to be making what our body needs at that time, right? Like your body will naturally determine how much of those hormones you need. And so seed cycling can be beneficial for, that transitional hormone time as well. Yeah.
And Lizzie, to answer your question in the comments, seed cycling is, we actually have a free class for all women. If you want to see it, let me know, drop it in the comments. But it's using seeds and nuts to balance your hormones naturally throughout the month. Do you want to explain more on that, Dr. Carmen?
Yes,
What
sure.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, I want to make sure I get these comments in the question or in the chat. So seed cycling. So our hormones naturally, right? Like just like we have circadian rhythms, if you know that, around sleep. And we know that we cycle every month, right? So the first half of the month, or the first period after we start bleeding is what we call the follicular period. And so usually that's where estrogen is kind of our biggest player in that first half. So we use seeds to support the production of that estrogen. So that's usually looking at like pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, and chia seeds. And then usually ovulation's like 2 weeks in. And then we move and we shift from what we call the follicular phase to the luteal phase. And usually the luteal phase is where progesterone is a little bit of a bigger player. And progesterone is our protective hormone. It's what helps us like have our period to that 28 or 30 days instead of like every 2 weeks or yeah, bleeding multiple times in a month. And so the seeds that we focus on during the luteal phase or during our progesterone dominant phase are sunflower and sesame seeds, right? So then we look at increasing those in our diet. Usually we're aiming for about 2 tablespoons a day during that 2-week cycle. And then we go back right to, so each cycle is a 2-week cycle. And we do that to help to provide your body with the building blocks of those fatty acids that are found in those seeds. Because all of our hormones require a fatty acid backbone. So that's the goal behind seed cycling. Does that make sense?
Interesting.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so what does this say? Let's see. Talk about the difference between how different stresses affect you differently. Stress is caused by job loss, life around you affecting you versus stress that your body undertakes. You're getting off medications or natural hormone shifts through the month. Ooh, okay. So when we talk about stress, right, we say stress is like this umbrella term, but stress really encompasses all of these things. So stress encompasses like worry, anxiety, fear, like anger, irritability, and it can encompass a whole umbrella of emotions. And so now there is a little bit of a difference. So if we perceive that stress, something like a job loss or grieving, right? Like somebody close to us that we lose, that's still a stressful event. It is, and so it still will kick off the same cortisol response. Now, when we do something like we're weaning off medications, or say we are like have a physical issue, then like an accident or a surgery or like a chronic illness like Lyme or chronic COVID or chronic mono, it still creates stress in the body. Okay. So technically, the body still gets the same signaling that something is wrong, and you will still have a higher demand for cortisol. So they may feel different, but the ultimate outcome is it still triggers a cortisol response, or what we call a higher demand for cortisol. Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. Let's see, Miss. Okay, how do you pronounce your name? Rel?
That's my nickname. Yeah, it's Rel. My full name is Jarrell, but everybody calls me Rel.
Rel. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. So let's see. We're talking about blotchy skin, breakouts, sty. Okay. Okay, so when I talk about that physiologic reaction, so there is a relationship. So when our blood is shunted to our heart and lungs because we experience stress, right? We've determined that stress can be anything, right? Because what's stressful for you might be not stressful for me, or vice versa, right? What might be stressful for me, you'd be like, I don't know why you're stressing about that, because we each have our own, individual experiences. But that also means that whatever we find stressful, when it shunts that blood to our heart and lungs, it moves the blood out of our skin, right? So sometimes this is where we can see like circulation changes. Sometimes people see this in their extremities, their fingers and toes, but you can see it anywhere on your body. But that also shifts, that higher demand for cortisol shifts us out of that immune response. So we are often a little bit more susceptible to illnesses when we're under stress, right? So if you've ever had that situation where it's like, you know, you've been stressed, and everybody like, oh, I have a good immune system, I don't ever get sick, until like it kind of builds up to a point, and then we kind of get sick with everything. Well, increased levels of cortisol suppress our immune system. Okay. And so if there's opportunists like styes, sometimes we see this with staph infections, it's an opportunist. And so we can get more infections when we have higher levels of cortisol, because cortisol is what our body makes, but the pharmaceutical equivalent to cortisol is cortisone, which is what they made prednisone with, right? So if you've ever been sick and you go to the doctor and you get prednisone, and it makes you feel better, it's because it's suppressing that immune system, giving you, it's a steroid, right? Giving you that energy to like go back to work or go back to school. And so, because we know that it suppresses the immune system. So your cortisol, higher levels of cortisol does the same thing. So that's why we often, will be susceptible to being sick. When we're under more stress.
That makes total sense. That's really crazy because I've had to fight with styes, so I kept like telling the doctor, I'm like, no, this is really like every time I'm super stressed, these get really worse, and they were just like, oh, it's absolutely no correlation. I'm like, it has to be something, but yeah, they did put me on prednisone too because it had gotten so bad with my eye.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's your immune system's not able to do what it's supposed to. And the thing is, when they put you on steroids, you feel better, right?
Right.
Which is usually what we want. We want to feel better so we can get going. But that isn't the best for our immune system long term.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Okay.
another reason why we have to work on our stress. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Follow-up question on that. Is that
Yeah.
why? So stress, the way it suppresses your immune system, is that the same way it like takes away the building blocks that are needed for regular hormone production?
Mm. Similarly, but not quite the exact same. But yes, yes. Because when our body's under stress, we're going to use a lot of our reserves a lot faster, right? We're using our B vitamins, we're using our magnesium, so our vitamin D, we're using them so quickly. So that makes those building blocks not available for our other, biochemical cellular processes. That's why we could become deficient so quickly.
Mm. Chronic stress will fill extra nutrients. Got it.
Yeah.
But stress in the morning is a good thing. Is that right? The cortisol, natural cortisol levels, we need them throughout the day.
Yes. So I wouldn't word it as stress, but first thing in the morning. But yes, our cortisol levels are naturally higher in the morning. And that's our natural response. Just like we have our hormones, like our estrogen and progesterone cycles, our cortisol cycles too. It just has a 24-hour cycle. So usually it's highest of a morning to like help you get out of bed, get dressed, start your day, right? Be motivated. And then it naturally, gradually declines as the day goes on. Yeah.
Got it.
Yes.
So cortisol is not the enemy. Chronic cortisol is.
Exactly. Yes. Let's see. So, Miss Carla, is seed cycling not important after menopause or hysterectomy? So I would argue that seed cycling is still important after menopause and after a hysterectomy, because you're trying to optimize your body's production of those hormones, right? So it's never, this is what conventional medicine used to tell us, is like, oh, your body just doesn't make those hormones anymore. And that's just not true. Our body's still making those hormones. But if you provide those building blocks that are found in the seeds, in seed cycling, then you can optimize what your body can produce, right? Which means you could have less symptoms. So in menopause and hysterectomies, right, we can often see, like, again, the hot flashes. We can see like what we call vaginal dryness or changes in the vaginal tissue. You can see memory changes, bone changes, because we're not making as much estrogen. But if we optimize what we can make, then oftentimes, right, there's an easier transition in those hormones. Does that make sense?
Follow up on that. Is that also applicable to breastfeeding moms who haven't started their cycle back? Like having benefits from seed cycling even though they don't have their cycle?
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
What are those
So,
benefits?
sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What are the benefits for breastfeeding moms who don't have a regular cycle but want the benefits of like regulated hormones from seed cycling?
Yes. So when we're breastfeeding, there's a little bit of I mean, you're still making, estrogen and progesterone, even if you're not cycling or actually having a period. But those seeds, when we're talking about adding or supporting that fatty acid backbone or providing those ingredients for your body to make hormones, we're not just talking about our estrogen and progesterone, right? We're talking about our other hormones, our thyroid hormone, something called oxytocin, which is necessary for breastfeeding moms. Again, a little bit of that cortisol hormone, our insulin hormone. So it's not, I don't want you to think those seed cycling or just like focusing on those seeds just to support progesterone and just to support estrogen, and that's all they do. They also help to balance out all our hormones. Yeah. Which is going to be helpful for all women, but especially when somebody is breastfeeding, right? Like the demand on their body is a little bit higher because they're providing, 100% nutrition for a little one. And so we want to still make sure those hormones are optimized. So, yeah.
Very good.
Okay, so if you've had a hysterectomy and it's still important and you're not having a cycle, then how do you know when to do which seeds?
Oh, that's a great question. So, traditionally, seed cycling was done around the full moon and the new moon, because our hormones are directly influenced by the moon cycles. So before electricity, right? Before we lived in houses like we do today, women's cycles were often around the new moon and the full moon. So usually for folks who aren't having a cycle anymore or aren't bleeding every month, that's what we go off of. So so usually at the full moon, okay. Usually at the full moon, we're starting that follicular phase, which is the flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, and chia seeds. And then at the new moon, we're doing the sunflower seeds and sesame seeds. So now those things aren't set in stone. So because there are some women who bleed on the full moon and some women who bleed on the new moon. And so you can kind of pick up where it makes sense to you. But that's usually what we're looking at. Yeah. And I think, Bree, with that talk, there's a handout that explains that.
Yes. There's a full class on seed cycling. It's great for all women of all stages of life. And I don't understand why they don't teach it to all girls. I think in fourth grade when they teach us about deodorant, they should teach it
on our body.
because it's so good for us. So give our body the building blocks that it needs to be optimized. But yeah, so there's a couple of handouts on that. So just let us know. You can drop in the comments here, or just shoot me a message and we'll get you that class and all that information.
Excellent. All right. Are there any other questions about stress in this relationship to our physical health before I shift gears a little bit? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess while we're on the topic, before we shift gears too much, and I really just want to see if you agree or have anything to add to it when it comes to our physical bodies. Often we hear things like high cortisol is what's keeping you from being able to shred body fat. And I talk to women almost every day who tell me things like their medical doctors even tell them, hey, the only way you're going to be able to shred body fat is through surgery, like something like Ozempic or another pharmaceutical. And so they're feeling really hopeless. And so, but from my understanding, it's not so much the stress on your body that is keeping you from losing weight, but how we manage the stress. Because just because you're stressed and maybe you are craving those sugary foods, or you're feeling like you need something to comfort or quick energy burst because you might have to fight a bear, um, then you're going to be craving those like sugary snacks that give you a quick energy boost, right?
Yes.
So that's where the weight gain would come in versus if maybe we try some of the things that you teach us in this class. Are we on the
Yes.
same link there? Like, it's
Yes. Yeah. So, no, you're exactly right. So it's not, I mean, because cortisol is not the bad guy, right? Like we need cortisol. It's essential. It's part of our adaptation and how we're created. So we need that to stay alive, right? It's how we manage the demand for cortisol or how we manage our stress, right? Now, I like to work at addressing the root cause, right, with folks. And so when we're talking about shredding body fat, we're talking about losing weight, right? That root cause might be a little bit different for everybody, right? Right. That's why we talk about inflammation, and the gut reset. But it wouldn't be a full conversation if we didn't talk about hormones. But it's when we're under that chronic stress, what that means is if we're not taking the time to reset that cortisol response. Okay, so this is a great question because it kind of leads us into this a little bit, this transition. So when we have this sympathetic state, this is that like survival, that high cortisol state, right? The opposite of that is called our parasympathetic state. That's what we call like the rest and digest. I call it the regenerative state, right? Is that parasympathetic state. And our body's built to be able to go back and forth and flip that switch on and off, right? We talk about, right, especially like weight around the middle that's kind of built up over time because we're under high stress. It's because we are not actively balancing out or flipping that switch into that parasympathetic state. And so that's that kind of that managing stress piece. When we're in this restful, regenerative state, this is when we're creative, right? This is when we like get to problem solve. We get to like do things that are fun, be creative, create things, right? Versus in the sympathetic state, the survival state, we're like pushing through, right? We're like showing up even though we're exhausted and you want to be right doing something different. That's right, like that's that survival mode. And so finding that balance is really important. Now, the research shows us that when we activate that parasympathetic state, or we are used to doing more exercises to manage that stress, or we change our mindset around stress, it opens up that, no, it promotes that rhythm of our cortisol, right? So when we talked about that 24-hour cycle of cortisol, that it's its highest first thing in the morning to help us get dressed, get out of bed, get motivated, then it naturally declines and it should be its lowest at bedtime to help us sleep, right? So we call that a cortisol loop or cortisol curve. So the same thing, like when we're under a lot of stress. So if you think back, like before, historically, right? Before houses before electricity, when we had to go out and like chase down dinner, right? Didn't matter what part of the world we lived in. If you had to go down and you had to chase dinner, right? What happened? It was a stressful state. You're out there trying to get something to feed your family, right? And then once it is accomplished, there's a celebration, right? There's like this closed loop. So when we have a lot of stress, and we need to like burn off that stress, if you will, or shift gears into that parasympathetic state, right? We can do that with a ton of different things. We can do that with exercise, with walking. We can do that with some of the things I want to share with you today. But we're trying to like shift into that parasympathetic state. And when we're there, that's when our body's healing, repairing, we're shredding fat, we're losing weight, right? We're changing our mindset and being creative. Does that make sense? Perfect. All right. So what can we do to shift things? So we can always work on our mindset, right? That's why we do things like mindset coaching. We do meditation. We like learn new things on how we can do it. But they talk about the vagus nerve. If you guys are familiar with the vagus nerve, yeah. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. And they talk about it being sort of the control system of our parasympathetic state, because it comes out in our out of our brain, or sorry, out of our skull, and then it goes down the side of our neck and innervates, or it sends electrical activity to our esophagus, to our diaphragm, to our stomach, to our large intestine, right? So the primarily like the digestive tract, that's that signaling that signals our body like, hey, we can be in that parasympathetic state when our vagus nerve is stimulated, right? Because that parasympathetic, that's that rest and digest. So when we are more in the cortisol high, in that sympathetic, our vagus nerve doesn't get a lot of innervation. It doesn't get a lot of attention. So when we're trying to learn how to turn that switch off from sympathetic to parasympathetic, we can do things to tonify our vagus nerve, right? Just like you go to the gym, right? And we tonify our muscles, we can do the same thing, but really focusing on that vagus nerve. Okay. And so that's some of the things that I wanted to share with you guys today, because we're talking about like managing stress. It doesn't take a vacation, right? It doesn't take like going to the beach for a week to balance out our cortisol. We can do it in like 2 or 3 minutes, multiple times a day. It will help to reset that switch. Yeah. 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 So it's a much more manageable. Yeah. All right. So so you guys are familiar with vagus nerve, and have we practiced vagus exercises before? Maybe? No. Okay.
I have not taught them about the vagus nerve. We
That's
just talked
okay.
about sculpting muscles.
That's all right.
We got to learn today, sculpting the vagus nerve.
Yeah. So we're gonna so we're gonna practice a couple of things to tonify the vagus nerve. So the easiest one to start off with is breathing, right? And so let me give you an example. How we have a tendency to breathe from our chest, right? And so when we breathe from our chest, this is a shallow breath. And so that sends signals to our brain that says, hey, we are not in a safe space, right? This is still perceived stress. So then, right, we still have that higher demand for cortisol. Versus if we breathe from our belly, right? You can't see this in my camera, but if we breathe from their belly, like at that belly button, that diaphragmatic breathing, right? They also call it abdominal breathing. We're engaging that diaphragm, we're lengthening the vagus nerve, and we're sending signals to our brain that says, hey, if we're safe enough to take deep breaths, oh, we don't need cortisol, right? Yeah. So when even just practicing belly breath, the research shows for 2 minutes, right, which ends up being, depending on how well we breathe, it can be anywhere from like 10 to 12 deep breaths, and can reset that parasympathetic and engage that vagus nerve. right? When I put my stethoscope on somebody's chest and I ask them to take a deep breath and everybody goes, you know, that's that shallow breath. And so we have to breathe from our belly in order to engage that vagus nerve. Yeah. So we can do diaphragmatic breathing. We can also do something called VU breath. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. So if that vagus nerve, it comes out of the back of our head, and it comes down right the side of our neck. And we're going to massage this here in a little bit. But if we do things like singing, gargling, right, and you do things to vibrate our vocal cords, we're engaging that vagus nerve. So the VU breath incorporates a deep breath from the belly. And when you exhale, you make the sound VOO, like a V, V-O-O, right? So if you take a deep breath in, if you guys will do it with me here, all right? Take a deep breath in, focusing on your belly, trying to fill that belly with air. I tell people, imagine a balloon, right, below your belly button. So if you'll take a deep breath in for me. And as you exhale, go VOO. We're going to do that 3 times, okay? Really try to get that V and that vibration in. So inhale. And exhale with a VOO. Perfect. One more. All right. Yeah. Do a really good inhale. And exhale. Boo. Perfect. Yeah. Can you feel that vibration? Yeah. So we can do that with singing and gargling. But that VU breath is a nice one to do. You can do it in your car, right? Like during break at the stoplights, to really engage that vagus nerve, right? So we can also do things when we engage our eyes in specific patterns. We can also stimulate that vagus nerve. So I don't know if you guys, I want to teach you another exercise. A lot of folks will do this before you get out of bed. First thing in the morning, you're laying down. You could do this sitting up, and that's the way we're going to do it. But you could do this laying down as well. And it's there's a scientist, his name is Rosenberg, so it's called the Rosenberg move. But if you take your fingers and you interlace your fingers, right, just like this, and you place them at the base of your skull, right, like at the base of your skull or very top of your neck, and you'll feel your fingers like right in that groove. And you really just kind of hold that position because you're supporting C1, C2, which is the top 2 vertebrae of your spine, right? Because our eye muscles are tied to that C1, C2. And so if you hold that C1, C2 with your fingers, and if you keep your head forward and you move your eyes to the far right, okay, and you hold that gaze, okay. Now I don't want it to be painful, so if it's too painful going far to your right, just come back a little bit closer to midline, but keep your nose straight forward and just your eyes are moving to the right. And we hold that position until you feel like a release, until we yawn. Oftentimes, right, sometimes people will like burp because we're engaging that vagus nerve and that parasympathetic, right? So oftentimes when we have that yawn, that's an autonomic release as well. So sometimes that can be like a few seconds for folks. Sometimes it may be up to a minute. Once you get that release, whether it's a burp, whether it's a yawn, then you come back to center with your eyes, and then you do the same thing on the left side. So you look far to the left. I do this a lot. You look as far to the left that's comfortable, and you just hold it. Yeah. The more that you do this, the more you will start engaging that vagus nerve as well. So Now, sometimes at the beginning, it may take like up to 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and that's okay, right? We're not here to like judge our body or to be like, oh man, I'm just under a lot of stress and like overthink things. Um, we're here just to make note, like just to notice, yeah, how we can experience that shift out of that sympathetic state. So, if you wanted to, I don't know how to type it into the chat. Oh, Rosenberg. Rosenberg technique. So you can look it up. Like I said, a lot of times we do it first thing in the morning before you even get out of bed, but you can do it at your desk. You can do it in the middle of the day to promote that vagus nerve response. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, when I
All
tried I felt it in my cheeks, but like when I learned to stimulate the vagus nerve, it's like at the back of the throat. It's like, like, is that where it is? It's like I think I was like I was making the sound all in my cheeks. So
But
did I do it wrong?
so you didn't do it wrong, but we got to practice a little bit. So, like how you would gargle in like the back of your throat, right?
Oh yeah.
That's where that boo should be coming from. It should be
Oh
coming
yeah.
from like the back of our throat. Like we want to be vibrating those vocal cords.
Mm,
So, yes. Yeah.
got it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome. Yeah. All right. So, perfect. So I wanted to teach you those two exercises first off, and then I want to move into a little bit of like massaging our face and neck, right? Because that also activates the vagus nerve. This can be part of like our spa night, and encouraging a little bit of self-care in that manner. Now, this is something that you can do, yeah, with your fingers. If you guys have ever heard of gua sha, there's a lot of different shapes. Bree has one there. Let's see. I have one. Oh no, the one like that shape is actually in the other room. But
I got it just for this class.
gua oh so you can get different shapes. And there sometimes people just use spoons or use your fingers. And the different shapes are supposed to be helpful. Like Breeze has like one indent. And so it's helpful for different, like to go around certain bones, right? Because this is what we're doing, is we're kind of hitting like the notches around our bones. And in traditional Chinese medicine, we use gua sha, which is the use of like, yeah, a tool or your fingers to massage it's usually the face, but you can use it anywhere in the body, to be honest. But I'm going to teach you a facial routine to help promote the lymph. It feels good, right? So it helps with self-care. And in this case, it does also stimulate the vagus nerve. So we kind of have multiple things going on. Now, when we move the lymph, right, oftentimes, like you can tell, I put contacts in before this class so I could see you guys as I did this, because normally I do it in the shower and I don't have to see anything. So, but like, we can have like swelling, right? We can get bags under our eyes. You might wake up some mornings and you're like, gosh, I feel like my face is puffy. That can be, right, a little bit of stagnation of the lymph. Now, the lymph system, we actually have more lymph vessels than blood vessels, and they are the highway that our immune cells travel through. And so we are moving, right, that lymph system. Let's see, Elizabeth. Yeah, perfect. We're moving the mucus, right? The lymph. So when we say the lymph, that's where all those inflammatory, or we say inflammation, but it's the immune cells, right? So we're just opening up those areas. So when we start with the head and neck, we always start at the collarbone, right? Because just below, so you can do this two different ways, but just below, if you feel your chest, and you'll feel where that like notches your collarbone right in the middle, and just below that is a whole string of lymph nodes. So we can actually like tap on those areas. You can actually massage or like rub those areas. So sometimes I'll do that in the shower when I've got like water and soap on. But if you take your finger and you just feel like right below where that collarbone is, and just rub it. Now, there may be areas that are a little bit tender. If there's areas that are tender, that is congested spot. Or if you feel lumps and bumps, like that lymph node's a little bit swollen, those are the areas that we need to focus on, okay? Because that's what we need to open up. All of our lymph vessels drain behind our heart in something called the thoracic duct. So when we are working on moving our lymph from our head and neck, we are moving right towards that thoracic duct behind the heart. So we have to open up downstream before we can start doing stuff up here. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So we always start here. So whether that's tapping or massaging, we want to open up, yeah, those lymph vessels so that things will drain the right direction. Right? Okay. So we know that, right, that vagus nerve. So if you, I could have taken my earrings off. Okay. I'm getting warm. So if you feel right behind your ear, right? So like you have this bony, I don't know if you can see it. You have this like bony protuberance, and then you go down and there's like a little divot right there behind your ear, right? And then if you follow that down, you will feel, right, a lymph node chain. This is what we call our posterior lymph node chains, right? So if you've ever been to the doctor and they like feel your lymph nodes, right, they'll feel up here at the front, it's our anterior chain, and then they'll feel the posterior chain, which is from the bottom of the ear. If you go straight down, that's where you'll feel that. So that's about where our vagus nerve goes. So you can also massage that area on both sides to, one, help stimulate the vagus nerve, but also open up that chain of lymph nodes. Okay. We are not massaging the anterior chain, right? So we're not going in front of the ear. This is the carotids, right? So we're not doing that. You could do carotid massages if we were worried about like blood pressure and issues, but that's not what we're focusing on today, right? So we're not massaging that. It's the back, the posterior. So from the bottom of the ear straight down. Okay. So then we open up those areas. Now, usually when we're doing gua sha and we're opening up the lymph nodes, we're usually doing about five passes on each side, right? So whether you do them individually, right, 5 on each side, or if you do them at the same time, that is totally up to you. Yeah. So we start here with the collarbone, and then the second one is we go behind the ear and down to the posterior chain of lymph nodes. Okay. We do that 5 times. Again, if there's any areas that are like tender, or like you feel a little bit of bump, usually that's an area that needs to be worked out. We do it gently, right? We're not like pushing in there really hard. We're still just like gently doing that. Okay. And then you go in front of the ears. So usually I use 2 fingers, but so like the little, if you feel the front of your ear where you have like this little notch, you feel the front, there's like a little indent, right? So that's the beginning of a lymph chain that comes out of the skull. So then we're going right from in front of the ears. So I usually do them both at the same time. Yeah. And I'm just pulling them down to the edge of that jawbone. Yeah. Sometimes this will also open up if you have like drainage issues like dizziness or like drainage congestion in your ears. Sometimes this can open that up too. Yeah. So we're just going down like this. Yeah. Okay. How are you guys doing? Okay. So then my next is you do your chin, right? Yeah. So I do it this way when I'm doing it by hand because I do 2 at the same time because we're busy, right? So you like start on the edge. I don't know. You start at the end of your chin and you're going, right? Like you're making that smile, and you're going and you're ending again, like right on both sides of the ear, right? So if you can see it like this, yeah. If you have a gua sha tool, like one that's got like a notch, this is, you're following, yeah, you put the bone, right, yeah, in between the notch. And so, yeah. And so usually in gua sha, we're always going up, right? We're not usually bringing things down. We're always going up. So again, it's usually 5 times on each side. When you go up from the chin, you're going up to the ear. And so if you think of, right, like that ear was our second drainage spot. So if we're pushing things up there, then from the ear, we go down, right? Because you're opening this up again. So you're going, right, up from the chin up to the ear, and then put your finger in that little divot and you're going down, right? And it doesn't take a lot of pressure, right? With the lymph, we're just lightly moving the skin. So it doesn't take a lot of pressure for that to be beneficial. Yeah.
What exactly is the benefit of moving our lymph, and how does that relate to the cortisol?
Yeah. So, oftentimes when we have high cortisol, we get that congestion, right? Because we said that cortisol lowers your immune system, right? Yeah. Or it suppresses your immune system to a certain extent. So when we're suppressing our immune system, that means that our immune cells are not moving down the highway very well and they get congested, right? When we get congestion is when we get swelling, right? Especially when it comes to like cortisol, we can see like, you can tell I'm under a lot of stress. You can see like that moon facies, is what they call that. You can see again, like bags underneath the eyes. We're also, when we say that our skin changes, right? It changes elasticity. It changes like acne, eczema, rosacea is more prominent when we have cortisol because of the congestion. Things are not moving, right? And so oftentimes when we want to feel better, it's nice if you look better. And so that's why we will do things like gua sha, because we're trying to manually move that lymph while we're addressing the cortisol at the same time. Perfect.
That's
Okay.
so good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we did the lower half, or yeah, so then we do the middle. So you do under your eyes and you follow your cheekbones out to your ears. So I do it this way. Yeah. Now if your face is dry, right? Like sometimes we do this in the shower because if you have used soap or if you have like a moisturizer or an oil and you're just, yeah, starting underneath your eyes and you're just following that cheekbone, right? To the top of the ear, right? So again, if you have a gua sha that has a divot in it, you would still just follow that cheekbone, right? You put that bone in that divot. Yeah. And so then we're just bringing it around the ear. So then again, you know how we massage the ears before? We're going down and we're pulling that out of the ear and we're pulling it down the neck. Yeah. So, like I said, with gua sha, we're always kind of going up, right? We're not like moving things down. We're always going up towards the ear. So, like usually in that smile pattern. And then when we pull it down, it comes down the back of the ear, towards the back of the neck. So, and then the same thing when we do the forehead, or we do like, right, we get this, I don't know what this is called, but you get this like wrinkle here sometimes. Yeah. So, so we're trying to straighten that out. So the same thing, usually we're going straight up, from the eyebrows, we're going straight up. And so sometimes if we don't like, oh, mine's tender today. But like I said, if you find tender spots, this is usually because this is where we need that, attention, right? So we're usually going up from the eyebrow, from the middle, from this, like, we call this yin tong, our yin tong point. And so we're going straight up into the hairline, right? And then you go over the whole eyebrow into the hairline. Huh. So you can do that with a gua sha. tool, or you can do that with your hands, but all the forehead's always going up. Always goes up into the hairline. Yeah. Then usually, like what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to go up into the hairline, and then they call it one soon, but one finger, one digit, which is actually yours is going to be different from mine, but this is actually a measurement from the hairline. That's when you come down to your ears. Yeah. So you get a little bit of a scalp massage too, and you come down to your ears. Yeah. And then again from the ears, you're coming backwards or posterior chain. Yeah.
And does this help with like premature wrinkles or like that scowling line? If that muscle isn't like tense, then you're less likely to have like a wrinkle there.
Yeah, so when we move, right, like usually we are like scowling or because we're tense, we're stressed, right? So if we're releasing that tension by bringing attention to it, by doing a little bit of self-care and a little bit of a gua sha routine or facial massage routine, yeah, we can move things, right? So in facial acupuncture, we are often doing a lot of acupuncture on yin tong. We're also, because people will get creases like this, right? And so we're also doing facial acupuncture in here to stimulate, right, like the flow of lymph, to stimulate like the production of collagen and things like that. Yeah.
Now, ladies, I try to get this to be an at-home acupuncture class. But Dr. Carmen said she didn't think that was practical.
It's like, I'm not sure how we're going to make that happen.
But it's like facial Botox, right? Um, attending to these muscles and like a natural Botox alternative. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So because you're and like with Botox, right, they're paralyzing, right, those muscles so that they don't react and create wrinkles. But when we're doing things like acupuncture or like facial massage, right, we're actually engaging those muscles to not be uh engaged, right? So it's the same thing like if you guys have ever so you know when you start on a workout routine and it's like, gosh, I haven't worked out in a really long time, and you work out and you're like, oh, things are really tight. But the opposite of that, right? Like if some muscles are really tight, but like our core is really lax, right? It's because some muscles are used to being engaged because we've been stressed, and some muscles are not used to being engaged, right? It's the same thing. That's our face is full of facial muscles. So just how you like work out your larger muscle bodies, it's the same thing. We're just doing it for our face and giving it a little bit more attention. Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
exciting.
All right. So there's a couple of points. So that's a lot, like that's mostly the kind of the routine, but I wanted to share with you a couple of points that can be really helpful for stress. Okay. So if you measure, I'm going to call it a measure, but if you take your thumb at the top of this ear, the same thing on this one, and bring those fingers together, the top of your head. I don't know what it looks like on my side view, but I'm going to say it looks like this. Right? Yeah. And then you bring those fingers together, right? The very tippy top of your head, that's called do 20. Okay. And you can press on that point so you can kind of feel it. Sometimes it might be a little bit tender. But you can tap on this point. If you guys are ever familiar with like EFT or emotional freedom tapping, we tap do 20 to help to release stress. But in Chinese medicine, they say that because it helps to open up our crown, so we get more energy flow to that area, right? So pressing, massaging on that do 20, the very top of your head or the crown of your head can be really helpful in just like helping us be grounded, right? And releasing some of that stress. Along that as well. In acupuncture, there's something that's called auricular therapy, which uses the ear to stimulate certain points. The entire body is reflected in the ear. I didn't bring an example, but if you grab a hold of your ear, the very top, like the floppy part, this cartilage part, yeah, the very first, like if you were to put a fingerprint in your ear, yeah, and you just massage that. My hair's in the way. This is the point that's associated with our adrenals. Yeah. So massaging, like, and it's really, you're just putting your thumb the very top of your ear. You're just pressing on that cartilage. Yeah. And we just massage it kind of back and forth. You can see what I'm doing with my fingers there. This is excellent because this stimulates our adrenals. So it helps to kind of set that reset button. Yeah. And so when we talk about acupressure, right? This is an acupressure point in our ears that will help to reset those adrenals. Now, because the entire body is reflected in the ear, right? Just massaging your entire ear and really kind of getting your finger in there and massaging your ear can stimulate all of our organ systems, right? Yeah. So sometimes massaging your ears is a great way when we're under a lot of stress, but it's not just the outside, it's also like getting your finger into the inner part of your ear, not the canal, but the inner part of your ear and massaging it all over. Yeah. Is a great way to do kind of like an all body, all organ systems support. And so yeah, we use auricular therapy that way as well because the entire body's reflected in the ear. Yeah. So, especially when people have trouble sleeping, you can massage your ears. Yeah, to do that. So like, we talk about the temple, right? Our temple of our head, and then just kind of between our temple and where the ear is, right in front of the ear, this is what we call the triple warmer in Chinese medicine. And it's not actually the temple, it's between the temple and the ear, so kind of at that hairline. And in Chinese medicine, the triple warmers, it's not exactly an organ system, it's kind of this state of mind. So when we have a tendency to be like very like in our head all of the time, right? And we need help like being a little bit grounded, and we're used to like overthinking things, overanalyzing. It's usually that triple warmer is on all the time. So we can actually regulate that triple warmer. We talk about regulating our nervous system. And so what you do is that area again between your temple and like the top of your ear, kind of halfway between, that's the start of the triple warmer. And so if you trace that to that area, to behind your ear, okay, down your neck, the outside of your shoulder, okay, around your elbow, and then to the top part of your arm, and then it comes out on your fourth digit. That's the triple warmer. And so you do that on both sides. So we can actually massage that to down regulate our triple warmer, which is a way we can kind of de-stress, balance out that nervous system. So if you guys want to do it with me, it doesn't matter. You can't really do both sides at once because we have to do it on both sides. Usually we're doing it 3 times on both sides. So if you'll take the, so it starts right in front of the ear, okay? It goes down behind the ear, down I should have done it with this arm, behind the ear, down the neck, around the shoulder, okay? And you're just massaging it, okay? Comes down the back of your arm, over your elbow, to the top of your hand, right? So like the dark part of your arm, and then it comes out on that fourth digit. So we do it 3 times. You do it do it 3 times on each side. So if that was 1, yeah. You're just gently massaging, just following that triple warmer. So when we engage, or when we massage that triple warmer, yeah, we're regulating our nervous system. So, and so we're just tracing it. Yeah, we're just tracing it. Yeah. How are you guys feeling?
Feels good. I love this.
Pretty good.
So,
Yeah, definitely love it.
yeah. So I like to engage that triple warmer, right? Especially if it's like, okay, right, like I'm going through all the motions, but I really like need that little extra to kind of be grounded. Or sometimes I just do it by itself. Like if I'm in between meetings, right, or in between appointments, yeah. I will sit here and I will just run along, just massage that, because we're just down regulating it. Right. So when we do that, we're regulating the nervous system. We're sending physical cues to our brain and to our body that says, hey, we're in a safe place. We don't need to be stressed, right? Like things are okay right now. And the more that we do that, the more we're like flipping that switch to encourage our body to be more in that sympathetic state, right? Because it's inevitable. We're always going to be stressed, right? We can't take a magic wand and like poof, all of our stress disappears, right? We need that stress response. But the trick is to be able to go from sympathetic to parasympathetic and flip that switch back and forth. And the more that we engage in these practices, the more that we, actively do like vagus nerve exercises, it's a lot easier to flip that switch back and forth. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. I wanted to open it up to see if you guys had any other questions. If there's anything else that I can, all right. This is a good one. Share with you. So Bree pointed out another one. So if you guys are not familiar, so there's actually a point called LI14 or LI4, large intestine 4. And if you take your hand and you see this web here, and you grab a hold of that web, and usually I start a little bit closer to our wrist bone, and I move forward. And when you move forward, oftentimes you find like, they call it a tender spot, but it's really a spot that when you press on it, it like, you feel like the pain, the sensation radiates, not necessarily pain, but it like radiates, right? Like it moves down the hand. Yeah. Another way to find it, if you don't want to start here and come down, is if you look at your thumb, right? And your thumb has this knuckle, right? When you put your thumb next to your hand, wherever that knuckle is, that's where that spot will be. Okay. So there's two different ways to find it. So because your hands are probably different size than mine, but this is individual to your body. So if you put your thumb next to your hand, and wherever that knuckle is, you just bend that knuckle and then go straight across. That's going to be your point. Yeah. They have tools now that you can actually get that will massage that point for you, so you don't have to do it. But that LI4, what we call it part of the four gates. So that's a very grounding point. It is excellent for pain. If you have headaches, if you have back pain, if you have an injury, this is excellent to use. So I like to teach this one to folks for like if you're hiking, if you're walking and you can't get to, like some type of anti-inflammatory, doing this point is very helpful. Now, if you massage this point and it's tender, that means we have congestion and we need to massage it more, right? It shouldn't be tender. So usually when we're massaging this point, that's a good indicator, and it's tender, that's a good indicator that it needs a little bit more help. Yeah. So yeah, this is LI4. I love this one. Yeah. Another one that I wanted to share with you is technically it's called pericardium 6. We use it for nausea, but we also use this for grounding, and we can use this for in Chinese medicine, they say that it's a heart point because it opens up our heart. So it helps us to be in that parasympathetic state, and can also be helpful for weight loss. So if you take your wrist and like, you'll see where this crease is, right? Everybody's got a wrist crease. And you take the opposite finger and you put the knuckle of your finger in that wrist crease, right? Yeah. And then you straighten right in the middle, and you straighten that finger out. Where that lands, that's your pericardium 6. Yeah. So it's a little bit easier if you do it like, when it's facing you, but I don't know how to do this. There's that wrist crease. Put your knuckle in that wrist crease, lay your finger down flat, and then where the tip of your finger falls, that's pericardium 6. And then I switch over to my thumb because it's easier. And so you massage that pericardium 6. This one is fantastic. So we say it's for the gut. We say it's for the heart. It's also helpful for like metabolism. So this is a nice one to kind of keep us grounded, helping to be in that parasympathetic state. But because it has ties to the digestive tract, because it has ties to, like our spleen channel, that's why we say it also helps with metabolism. Yeah. So, and again, if it's tender, that's usually a sign that we need to massage it a little bit more. So, so if you were looking it up, that's point pericardium 6. They call it PC6. This one here is called large intestine 4, or LI4, if you were to look it up online. Yeah. So, all right.
These are all also really good if you have symptoms of carpal tunnel or tennis elbow. Massaging that kind of muscles from here where you're starting kind of around that pectoralis minor, right under that clavicle. It's just the whole thing is so good for your multiple reasons.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah. Let's see. Ooh, okay. You have a great question about green tea for L-theanine and hair loss tips. So, when we're talking about other ways to support, right, moving out of that stressful state into a more parasympathetic state, there's an amino acid called theanine. I love theanine. I like it because, one, it's an amino acid that your brain and body should already be producing, right? So it's not like introducing an herb, right? It is found in green tea. And so you can incorporate more green tea into your diet. Now, theanine, if you look it up, it is marketed for ADD, ADHD. It's marketed for anxiety, and it's marketed for sleep. And now theanine, it relaxes the mind. Okay. So if it relaxes the mind, it's easier for us to stay focused with ADD, ADHD. If it relaxes the mind or calms the mind, it's easier for us to like keep perspective so our brain doesn't run away with us with anxious thoughts. And the idea at night is that the theanine, when we have a relaxed mind, it's easier to stay asleep and hit stage 4 in REM, which is when our body is healing and repairing. Okay. So theanine by itself doesn't knock you out. It doesn't like make you sleepy. Now, sometimes I will have people who will take it during the day and they'll say, Dr. Carmen, I'm so sleepy. I don't think I can take that theanine. It's usually because you're sleep deprived. Yeah. It's theanine itself doesn't make you sleepy. Like I said, it's in green tea, but it's usually if you notice that sleepiness, it's because we're sleep deprived. Well, as soon as your mind calms down, we get tired. That's because we need to sleep better at night. So then we start taking at night. Yeah. Now, if people are sensitive to theanine or they want to use that green tea to help them sleep, that first tea bag of green tea is usually where all the caffeine is. So if you'll steep that first cup And that's where that, for that 3 minutes, and that's where that caffeine is. And then put that cup aside. Let's use the same tea bag or tea leaves and steep it 2 or 3 more times. That's when you're getting more of that theanine out of those tea leaves.
Is that for
And
decaf
so,
as well?
well, decaf, they already chemically take the caffeine out. There's still a little bit of caffeine in it, but yes, usually not the first steep. Will have the most caffeine in it if it has it in it. And then you, steep it the second to third time. That's what you're drinking for the theanine. Yes. Yeah. Okay. You can find it in a supplement form. Now it's getting a little bit more popular. It's because, like I said, it's an amino acid that is helpful for all of our brains. I use it for all walks of life. I have a lot of students and kiddos so that we try a theanine because their parents don't want to start them on an ADD or ADHD medication that the school has recommended. And so we use theanine first, and folks have a lot of really good results with it. So an excellent way to help to support our stress response. I like it also because it's quick acting. So I So I use a lot of theanine. So this is one that I just got this week because I wanted something that was like, chewable. I was doing a lot of like, I don't know, not a lot, but that neuro gum is getting popular and it has theanine in it, but it also has caffeine in it. And I'm trying not to eat a lot of caffeine. And so it was helpful, but it was too much for me. So I moved to just like a sun theanine. Like this one, it's 100 milligrams. It's still a chewable tablet. And so I like this one when things get a little bit stressful. So, but I love green tea. If you're doing green tea, try to find organic, green tea leaves. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Hair loss tips. So we're talking about the root cause for hair loss, right? It's ultimately hormones. Now you can have hair loss like after a very stressful event. You can have hair loss, right? Like after a pregnancy, we can see hair loss. People were getting a lot of hair loss after COVID, right? Because COVID was so stressful on the body. Because a lot of folks, they weren't quite healthy enough or their immune system wasn't as robust to respond to COVID since it was a new virus. And so that's why a lot of people got hair loss after that. So when we address hair loss, it has to be multifactorial, right? We have to balance the hormones. We have to address the stress, but we can do things internally and externally to support hair or to reduce hair loss. Okay. So again, same theme, right? We're addressing the stress. We're doing our vagus nerve exercises. But you can actually do things like a hair tonic, and using essential oils to help to stimulate the follicles on our scalp. I usually do a mix of rosemary, melatonin, and clary sage, right? Rosemary detoxes the follicles. So if we detox the follicles, it helps to open them up so they'll grow, so the hair can grow. Clary sage balances the hormones, right? Because those hormones have to be balanced in order for us to actually get the signals to grow our hair. And then melatonin is what stimulates those follicles to start growing. Well, stimulates the hair in the follicles to start growing. Okay. So usually we're doing like a liquid melatonin. I prefer you have to do a little bit of digging, but try to get one that doesn't have like glycerin or sugar or stevia or something sticky in it, right? And then we're usually mixing the essential oils with it. And then you could just spray it on after you get out of the shower, let it dry. Some folks don't like to leave things in their hair, so we'll put it in a shampoo. So whatever, I like biotin shampoo, but whatever shampoo you have, take out a little bit, put in an ounce of melatonin. Usually it ends up being like 10 to 20 drops of rosemary and 10 to 20 drops of clary sage. It's going to make your shampoo watery or thinner, but still, pretty effective at stimulating the health of our scalp and yeah, creating a scenario so our hair can actually grow in fuller and healthier. Yeah. Yay. Okay. And then should we prioritize magnesium-rich foods to reduce stress and anxiety? So yes, we should prioritize magnesium-rich foods, but it doesn't technically reduce stress and anxiety. It increases our stress resilience. But the reason why we want to increase our magnesium foods is because the more stress we're under, the faster we use our magnesium. Right? Yeah. So we want healthy levels of magnesium. And usually we should have enough magnesium for our like day-to-day cellular processes and a reserve built up in our body, right? If we're under stress, we are using our magnesium so quickly. And then oftentimes we are using up our reserves. So that's why we can get magnesium symptoms or deficiency symptoms, which often look like muscle spasms, muscle cramps, Charlie horses, constipation, bloating can be a sign of magnesium deficiencies, blood pressure changes, blood sugar changes. Here's one, anxiousness in large rooms, right? Or like too much stimuli, like not being able to kind of manage a lot of stimuli, is actually a symptom of magnesium deficiency. So we can increase our magnesium foods to help to meet that demand. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, no, that was a great question. Another reason why I love to recommend people, if you have the ability and the opportunity, Epsom salt bath or magnesium flake bath, right? We absorb a lot of magnesium through our skin. So if our digestion isn't optimal and we have trouble digesting our magnesium, or like, okay, so last week I had a lady who came to me. She was taking 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams of magnesium. And at that high dose, I would expect some type of loose stools or diarrhea. And she was not having any of that. And usually 1,000 milligrams is kind of my max dose. I don't usually have people go more than 1,000. And usually we're only doing 1,000 for like a short amount of time. And then we drop to 500. And when she shared with me that she was taking 2,000 on a regular basis and was not having loose stools, I was like, oh, you are not absorbing your magnesium well. We need to find a different delivery form. So magnesium lotion, Epsom salt baths, yeah, until we get the gut healed.
Yeah. So that magnesium deficiency, is that ultimately leading to an electrolyte imbalance? So those symptoms are being dehydrated. So that's where you're going to have the constipation, the bloating, which can look like weight retention, but it's just water weight. Wow, that makes so much sense. Cool. Okay. So those cocktails, one of my students, Haley, who I believe you met, she found online like a cocktail beverage for cortisol. And I was like, this is just electrolytes. Just stay hydrated. And but they work. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So getting that magnesium, potassium, sodium from like a smoothie or something.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, the adrenal cocktails.
Yeah, that's
that you that's usually a balance of like an orange juice and then like Himalayan salt for the sodium and like a cream of tartar for the potassium, and like that vitamin C, right? And of course with your Himalayan salt you're getting trace minerals, but it's just electrolytes. Yes. Yeah.
So hydration is key for supporting
Yes.
stressful times. And that's all times your body needs to be dehydrated. Oh.
Yeah. Well, when we're dehydrated, right, it's a subtle stress, right? It's a subtle stress that our body's like, oh, we don't have enough resources, right? And so this is also sometimes part of fasting too. If people already have like adrenal dysfunction, sometimes fasting isn't a great idea for them. We've got to build your body up to be healthy enough to fast. So it's a subtle stressor that your body's like, oh, I don't have the resources, and it moves into survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, dehydration is one of those things people are like, oh, we take drinking water for granted, to be honest, in this country. Yeah, we take drinking water for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what exactly is adrenal fatigue? I heard you talk about your adrenals earlier, and that's a buzz term going
Yeah.
around right now, adrenal fatigue. And so what exactly is that, and what are symptoms that we can look out for that are high stress, like our cortisol is high? Like I know like a twitching eye is a symptom. What are some other things to look
Yeah.
at?
So when we say adrenal fatigue, it's a little bit of a loose term. Essentially what it boils down to is this like adrenal dysfunction. Your adrenals are not able to meet the demand, right? Yeah. Because if there's like day in and day out, this high demand for cortisol, your adrenals kind of get tired, right? And that's why we call this fatigue. The same thing happens with diabetics, okay? When you're insulin resistant and you're eating sugar a lot of time and your body can't meet that demand for insulin, your pancreas gets tired, right? Your pancreas gets fatigued. It's another gland just like your adrenals. That one is we're more I guess used to seeing that scenario than we are adrenal fatigue, or conventional medicine is more used to seeing that scenario. So when we say that, that's essentially what it is your body's not keeping up with the demand. So then we have to reevaluate, right? That's when we talk about moving to that parasympathetic state is like, yeah, what can we do to reduce the demand on our adrenals? Yeah. Things like, yep, eye twitching, or sometimes just muscle twitching, where sometimes you can feel it and sometimes you can't see it, but sometimes you can see it. Again, muscle spasms, waking up at like 2 or 3 o'clock every night, is a good sign that we're like, yeah, having a little bit of adrenal dysfunction. It's a spectrum in the sense that the longer we go, or the longer we are fatigued and we can't meet that demand, the more severe our symptoms get, right? So at the beginning, it may be like, oh yeah, like we're dysregulated in the sense that we're tired, but we feel wired. We have trouble falling asleep at night, right? Your body's tired, but we can't turn our brain off at night. Sometimes we see things like brittle nails, like our nails aren't strong anymore, or we can see like, yeah, our hair loss, or sometimes it may be like thinning. We might see like our skin is not collagenous, right? Like wrinkles, or it's not as like doesn't hold moisture as well, more dry skin. Supple, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. We can see like in the beginning of sort of that adrenal fatigue, the longer it goes when we don't address it, or we don't find ways to rebalance, is when we start to see that fatigue. Like it's hard to get out of bed or off the couch, right? Like we're exhausted. We're pushing through every day. We're not waking refreshed in the morning. We're relying on caffeine throughout the day, right, to keep us going. So we get that like whole spectrum of symptoms.
So don't do a HIIT workout if you're already freaking out from high cortisol with your body's already super stressed out. That's correct, right? For example, someone that's why like my clients who have PCOS, they have high stress. So we take them off of running and do more low impact things, walking over high
Yeah.
intensity.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. So sometimes I have so this is a little bit of a dichotomy. Sometimes I have athletes who are high stress, right? Like I have a couple of examples of like small business owners, right? Like they're driven, high achieving women, CrossFit, right? Like they're pushing and they're pushing hard every day, right? And like something changes in their life. Now they have to be a caregiver of a parent and it keeps adding on, right? But they're high achievers. Like they're gonna meet that responsibility, right? Like their whole family's relying on them. And so they keep showing up day in, day out, but they don't take the time for themselves to reset that parasympathetic, right? They absolutely love CrossFit, right? They love, that's their like, that's their stress relief. But there's a balance, right? Like they don't recognize that that's actually creating more stress for the body. So when I have folks who have this adrenal dysfunction, yeah, we don't stop moving. We keep moving, right? It just looks different, right? We shift into like walking, we shift into like stretching, we shift into like lower impact things, right? We're still getting in movement and exercise. It just may look different depending on what your body's needs are. Yeah.
Just for this season.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
reset for a little bit, regain the foundations, building up that strength. So good. So what do we do? Any other, I know we do the draining. Should we do some stretching, deep 100 breath challenge? That's a favorite of mine, of yours.
I enjoy that. So I tell folks, right, when we're trying to engage that vagus nerve, and because we take breathing for granted, if you aim for 100 conscious deep breaths a day, right? So that means you're engaging that diaphragm, right? You're breathing into your belly. You're sending signals to your brain and to your body that, hey, again, we can flip that switch. We don't need our cortisol right now. We don't need to be in a high stress state. So it's not always 100 conscious deep breaths at one sitting, right? I have people do it throughout the day. So when you first wake up in the morning, take 2 or 3, belly breaths before you get out of bed, right? If you drive a lot, every time you see a stoplight, take 2 or 3 deep breaths, right? Every time you go to the bathroom, every time you wash your hands, right? Create a habit around that, so you don't even think about it, right? I tell people, partner it with something else. So whatever you have a tendency to do a lot of during the day, throw in a couple of deep breaths in there with it as well. And before you know it, right, you are training your body, right, to flip that switch, to be in that parasympathetic state. Every time we do that, we're balancing hormones, right? We're reducing symptoms. We're actually putting our body in that healing and repairing state that it wants to be in.
So good. Slowing down. And ultimately, when you come back, you're going to come back with more energy, better performance.
Oh, yes.
So recovery and rest doesn't make you weak. It helps to make you stronger. And that's really exciting.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carmen. I know a few other things we can do: stretching, getting outside, getting some vitamin D, enjoying your meals, being mindful instead of watching TV or cat videos while we're scrolling on social media, just putting the phone down, looking at your food, eating your food, enjoying time with people, getting plugged in. When we're stressed, we may feel tempted to isolate, but getting plugged in with your community, laughing, watching funny videos, and also getting support. Yeah. And I know we've gone over time, a really long class, but plugging in, getting support with natural medicine needs with Dr. Carme Jones, getting support with lifestyle overhauls, body transformation goals in the SCULPT Fitness Academy, or just grabbing a fit friend and going for a walk at the park for a hike. It can be so good for just uplifting your spirits and helping your body perform and just feel safe, and so you feel at home in your body. Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any final things to close us out with, Dr. Carmen? Did we hit everything?
I think we hit everything. Just a couple things that you mentioned on that I want to reiterate is that oftentimes as women, when sometimes things get stressful and sometimes we may have a tendency to think we have to do it all by ourselves. When you said plug into the community, yes, I'm always going to reiterate that, because sometimes it's easy when we get overwhelmed to get a little bit stuck, right? And I will guarantee that you are not alone. Whatever feelings you're feeling, whatever's like going through your mind, and you're like, oh gosh, other people can't think this, right? Like this is, whatever judgment we may put on it, you are not the only one, right? And so, reach out, right, to your community to hear, to share that, because there's always going to be somebody in a similar situation, or who may be who's already kind of gone through that part of the journey, who might be willing to share and be supportive. And if we have trouble, I love to encourage people to go outside and be in nature, right? Oftentimes when we have a lot of stress, right, there's two components that like kind of the therapy world talk about, and they talk about like things that are top down and then bottom up. And top down are things like meditation, prayer, right? Like maybe things like coloring, things like, you know, maybe listening to music, right? Versus things that are bottom up are like movement, right? Like getting outside, going for a walk, stretching, right? All the things that you kind of described. If something's not working, right? Or if you like, oh, this has always worked for me in the past and it's not working anymore, that's our opportunity to explore something different, right? We're always changing, and sometimes our journey always changes too. And so, I would encourage you not to get stuck on like our regular stress relieving techniques aren't working anymore. That's our opportunity to explore something different.
Yeah. And also, I like
you.
to encourage in the community, like casting your anxieties on the Lord, and spending that time in prayer and thinking, like setting our mind on things above that are all biblical commands to do when we're feeling stressed. So, finding comfort in the Lord there, which is really exciting, and prayer together, all of those things. Cool. Okay, well, I'm putting together a guide for everyone. We'll be talking about cortisol, stress management, fat loss. We'll deep dive a little bit about like emotional eating. If you're feeling those feelings and you're used to going for food for comfort, well, what can we swap that out with so that you have comforting habits that help you feel good for the long term? Thank you so much, Dr. Carmen, for everything and spending this extra time together. You are such a gem and a delight, and we're so grateful for you. Okay, do you have anything else to add? Is that a wrap?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Have a wonderful evening, and we will stop recording here. And oh, wait, hold on. That ends the meeting.